1862 Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln declares freedom for all slaves. 1865 End of American Civil War. Battle against slavery ends. And yet, more than 50 years later, people still felt the need to leave their lives behind in the South in order to escape from racism, the very thing that began slavery. After World War I, many of the cities in the North had a great shortage of workers. Because economic conditions were terrible in the South, African Americans saw the North as a place of many opportunities. These African Americans believed that by moving to the North, they would be able to live in a non-prejudiced society. The African Americans would finally be able to leave behind the terrible conditions of the South, such as segregation, not only in the workplace, but also in daily life situations. Flooding constantly damaged the crops, which were a lot of people's source of much-needed money. The wages the African Americans received paid for very little. It was true that the move north provided African Americans with more job openings, better living conditions, and more reasonable wages. However, the equal society that they had looked forward to was non-existent. Because they weren't accepted by whites, the African Americans decided to create their own community in the North, known as Harlem, a community where they wouldn't have to change things about themselves in order to be accepted. They had a lot of dignity in their culture, and they wouldn't just change for anybody. But the African Americans were still stuck between two choices, whether to establish their cultural roots or whether to change their culture to try to fit into the white community. During these times of struggle, Jacob Lawrence was born in 1917 in New Jersey, as his family had been one of many that had moved to the North in search of better lives. In 1924, Jacob Lawrence finally experienced life in Harlem. In his paintings, Lawrence portrayed daily life of African Americans. For the Great Migration, he painted 60 panels of the African Americans' journey. Lawrence begins by explaining that the North was a better place for African Americans to stay, as the South was full of discrimination. Lynching was common in the South, where many African Americans were being hanged and murdered by mobs of whites. In this painting, panel 15 of the Migration series, a black man is crouching on a rock with his head barely visible. This makes it seem as if he was decapitated, like he was a victim of lynching. The sky that he looks toward represents freedom, but the rope, along with the tree that it's attached to, completely divides this sky. The rope, symbolizing the whites' hatred toward African Americans, intrudes on the man's complete freedom. To leave these types of abuses behind, the African Americans moved to the North, hoping for a better life. Although they expected to find equality in the North, the African Americans still had to fight racism there as well, because according to Lawrence, there was no escape from it. Panel 50 of his series depicts a race riot to show the violence that racism brought upon both blacks and whites. A small, black and faceless figure runs away from a furious white man dressed in black. The significance of these two men is shown not only through their position, with the white man in the foreground and black figure in the background, but also through the color. The black man is the same color as the white man's coat, which implies that these two dark figures are equal in importance. He also has no face or expression. He has no identity. He is like an item to the white man. Because African Americans couldn't fit into the white community, they established their own culture known as Harlem, mainly just as a coping method. However, many of the African Americans weren't satisfied with being separated from whites. They set up an education system, found a way to participate in politics, and carried on their daily life activities without them. Over time, within Harlem, the African Americans became strongly united with one another. This unity and bond sparked up some pride in their culture, which was the migrants' ultimate goal, to establish their cultural roots even when surrounded by intolerant people. Lawrence began the series at a train station, using primary colors for the migrants to show the connection between them. All the figures have no faces or identities. They don't represent individuals, but rather the African American race as a whole. Throughout the series, Lawrence paints the faceless figures in the same primary colors, even ending the series with people like the ones he used in panel 1. By doing this, he shows that no matter what the migrants faced, unity was the one thing that never faltered during their journey north because it created such a powerful bond between them. Through his migration series, Lawrence tried to convey that instead of changing too much to integrate into white society, African Americans did the right thing by building up their strengths, such as their bond with one another and the pride they had in their African American culture. Not only does this apply to African Americans from 50 years ago, but to everybody right now. Rather than changing in order to be accepted, it's better to strengthen one's good features and take confidence in oneself than wait to be accepted by others.